There are stories throughout the Sith Empire that sound far more like myth than they do history. Tales of ancient warlords who bent the galaxy to their will, of kings and gods born of the dark side itself. There is one story though so unthinkable that most believe it is exaggerated. It is a story of a child born to no great house who became the ruler of an entire world before he ever reached his teenage years. His name was Tenebrae, a boy of black eyes and perfect silence. And by 13, he had conquered everything that he knew. This is one of the most haunting beginnings in all of Star Wars legends. The rise of the child who would become Vitiate, the Sith Emperor, and eventually Valkorion, the immortal god of domination. But before he was any of those, he was just a boy, and his world learned what happens when the dark side gives birth to something extremely unnatural. Today, we will be covering and documenting the entire origins of the most evil and most powerful Sith Lord in all of galactic history. We often speak of him as Vitiate or Valkorion, already an emperor, already a man reaching for godhood. But it is of my opinion that his origins and beginning are far more chilling. Tenebrae was born circa 5113 BBY, the illegitimate son of Lord Dromoth, ruler of the world known as Madrias, and a poor farmer's wife. From the moment of his birth, it was clear that something was deeply wrong with Tenebrae. His eyes were black as the void. He never cried. He never smiled. Animals fled from him. The air around him was described as heavy. Even by Sith standard, he was strange. He was only a child, but the Force did not flow through him naturally. Rather, it obeyed. By 6 years old, his stepfather had begun to suspect that the boy was not his own. When Tenebrae's mother admitted that the child's true father was the Sith Lord Dromoth, the farmer attacked her. From the corner, from the shadows, the boy didn't act, he simply watched quietly. And then he simply thought, and the farmer's neck snapped. Tenebrae stood over his stepfather's body. He didn't move. He didn't cry. He didn't even breathe heavily. He had felt the Force respond so quickly, in an instant, and he understood what it was. This was power and control. Then in an act that would define his nature forever, Tenebrae turned on his mother, not in anger, but in pure curiosity. He tortured her with the Force for months, keeping her alive only in a state of agony, studying her pain like a scholar, and when there was nothing left for him to learn, he snapped her neck as well. Word of this boy spread quickly through the northern reaches of Madrias. Tenebrae began walking into villages alone. He didn't need armies, and here he only spoke and people obeyed. He could bend entire crowds to his will, commanding them to kneel, to fight, to even die. When those who resisted attempted to kill him, to usurp his control, he used their fear to make them destroy one another. By 7, he ruled his first settlement. By 9, he ruled over dozens of settlements and thousands of slaves. His legend and his power grew with every life that he crushed. He seemed to feed on the pain, on obedience, on pure domination, and the dark side bent itself to his will and his whims. Tenebrae became renowned for his public spectacles, executions that lasted for days, not for punishment, but simply to feed his curiosity, to draw power from the dark side in its purest form, in agony and in pain. With this, he grew emboldened, passionate. To the Sith, the dark side was a fire. It was chaos, emotion made manifest, pure, holy even. But to Tenebrae, it was different. It was cold. It was always silent. It was hungry. He was the dark side made void. Eventually, rumors of a child ruler reached the Sith Lord Dromoth himself, the ruler of Madrias, the man who had unknowingly fathered him. When the massacres could no longer be ignored, Lord Dromoth personally rode to the northern continent to see the truth for himself. He found the child waiting, as if he already knew that he would be there. Tenebrae revealed who he was, and then, with barely a gesture, stripped his father of the Force. He didn't just kill him, he emptied him, severed him from the power that had defined him and defined any great Sith Lord. This left him broken and insane. And then, with no emotion, he ended his father's life. At 10 years old, Tenebrae had destroyed the Sith Lord of his world. Over the next 3 years, Tenebrae expanded his control until every city, every fortress, every noble house, and every humble hut bowed before him. Those that defied him were erased. Those who submitted became hollow-eyed servants, their will overwritten by his. He was not a ruler of armies, he was a ruler of minds. He controlled thousands at once, puppeteering them like extensions of his own body. By 13, Madrias was his. Entire continents fell silent under his command. The planet itself seemed to darken, as though the Force recoiled from its own master. No one dared challenge him. And so, the child who had begun life as a peasant stood as a Sith Lord, self-taught, self-made, and utterly alone. When word of the boy Emperor reached the reigning Dark Lord Marka Ragnos, the ancient Dark Lord of the Sith and ruler of the Empire summoned Tenebrae to Ziost. The meeting between them has become legend, but the truth in actuality is far stranger. The 13-year-old boy stood before the most powerful being in the galaxy, and asked not for wealth, not for favor, but for apprenticeship, in hopes of learning at his feet. He wanted to understand the dark side at its highest level, and Ragnos, for perhaps the first time in his reign, fell silent. Because the power he felt from this child did not sing like the dark side normally did. It didn't burn either. It simply devoured. Where other Sith were fire, the child was the void. He was too young, still growing into his power, but already Marka Ragnos could sense the cold inevitability deep within his heart. He wasn't the next great Sith Lord. He was something maybe beyond the Sith, something that would break them. Ragnos understood immediately that to train him would be to train his own destroyer. And yet, Ragnos did not destroy him. The thought crossed his mind. It would have been the easier path, but he saw something in the boy that made him hesitate. Tenebrae was the dark side in a new form, maybe even an evolution. His power and motivation were not just in lust or rage, but it was controlled, strange. To the untrained eye, maybe even it seemed quiet. To kill him would mean to defy the will of the Force. So Ragnos did something few Sith would have. He showed mercy, or perhaps strategy. He granted the boy his father's title, dominion over Madrias. He renamed the world Nathema, and bestowed upon Tenebrae the name Vitiate, a word that meant to corrupt or to make impure. It was an acknowledgement of his power, as well as a form of exile. Marka Ragnos, the unifier of the Sith, had just sent away the greatest threat to their future, cloaking it in honor. Many Sith scholars remember that moment as the day the galaxy was spared, but in truth, Ragnos' decision may have doomed it, because Vitiate learned from Ragnos and twisted his example. Where Ragnos unified the Sith to preserve them, Vitiate would one day unify them to consume them. He would take the dark side Ragnos had nurtured and devour it whole. And though he would nearly annihilate the Sith species in the process, he would also lead them, centuries later, to this strange, hollow salvation, bound to him, immortal. Perhaps Marka Ragnos knew. Perhaps he saw this cold, emotionless child was something the Force itself created. And so he sent him away, not out of fear, but because even the wisest Dark Lord in history knew the truth. You cannot destroy what the dark side has willed to exist. Time would pass, and Marka Ragnos finally fell to old age and died, something that the Sith long believed to be impossible, and the Empire did exactly what Vitiate had expected. It tore itself apart. Rivals rose immediately. Figures like Naga Sadow and Ludo Kresh clawed at one another, desperate to seize the crown and to claim the title of Dark Lord. They lunged for it like animals, mistaking chaos for strength and ambition for destiny. To them, Ragnos' death was opportunity, but to Vitiate, it was something more. Vitiate had learned something from Marka Ragnos that the others never did. He understood his patience. He did not fight for the throne. He didn't even declare himself. He did not march, or challenge, or posture. He sat back and he waited in the shadows. He knew the time would not come when the Sith were fighting for new power. The time would come when the Sith would be fractured and weakened. And in the eyes of Vitiate, now inferior, it would be here where he knew they would reach out to him for help, and he would extend his hand. Not to save them as they believed though, but to consume them. To Vitiate, the Sith had misunderstood the dark side. They believed it existed to be wielded, even shared. But to him, the truth was simpler. The dark side existed only for him. Though he had been sent away in what appeared to be a quiet exile, Vitiate did not vanish. From afar, he studied Ragnos, the Sith Emperor who had ruled for 300 years unquestioned in a golden age of unity and dominance. Vitiate observed how an empire was held together by a constant voice, not from violence. On the dead world of Nathema, he began to experiment. He studied rituals and alchemy. He unearthed horrors that had been buried for centuries, secrets that even Dark Lords would have recoiled from, knowledge that would have left many of them cowering like broken children if they only understood what he was becoming. And it was there, in isolation and in silence, that Vitiate created what is known as the Ritual of Nathema, a power that didn't conquer worlds, it emptied them. And one day, he would unleash it, and with it, ascend beyond every Sith Lord who had fought for a crown they were never meant to wear. From the wreckage of the Great Hyperspace War, Vitiate would become their guide. He would lead them away from the known galaxy, away from the eyes of the Republic and the Jedi they had stirred awake too early. He led them into the deep unknown, to new frontiers, to the hidden world of Droman Kos where the dark side itself seemed to rot away the sky. And it would be there where they would wait. And while they waited, Vitiate would learn. He began experimenting with new transgressions, transferring his consciousness into multiple vessels, abandoning the limits of a single body. Flesh was no longer something to inhabit, but something that he needed to discard to transcend. The Force was no longer something to channel or obey, but something to control, something he believed that he owned. On the world of Droman Kos, he built councils and hierarchies. He shaped the Sith into an empire that existed in shadows rather than with open banners. They spread in secrecy, quiet, relentlessly, an illness growing in the veins of the galaxy. The Republic did not notice. The Jedi did not sense it. Not until they were too dangerous. Not until it was too late. And yet, even as the Empire grew, Vitiate withdrew. He chose a different path from Marka Ragnos. He did not rule as a visible emperor. He would not sit on a throne or command through presence and fear. Kings and empires were temporary things, fragile things. Instead, Vitiate stepped away from the crown. He focused on something he believed was greater. He would move beyond emperors, beyond the Sith themselves. He would pursue the final evolution of the dark side, not rulership, but true transcendence. He would become what he believed he was destined to be from the moment that he opened his black eyes, a god. But do not forget where our story began. It did not begin with a throne or a new empire, not in the halls of Ziost or the academies of Korriban. It began in a quiet hut on a forgotten world once called Madrias, among warrior-like tribal people living on the fringes of Sith space. A place no Dark Lord ever bothered to watch. A place no one of importance ever thought twice about. It was there. A child was born with eyes dark as the void. Born from a lie. Born of deceit. An accident by the standards of the galaxy. But not by the standards of the dark side. To the Force, Tenebrae was chosen. A true contender for the Sith'ari. The chosen one. Not a savior, but a destroyer. The most dangerous and powerful Sith born since the reign of the ancient kings, since the eras of Ajunta Pao and King Adis. No prophecy announced him, no council recognized him, and no empire ever prepared for him. And yet, in that humble village, far from the attention of the Sith and the Republic alike, the galaxy's greatest threat was quietly born, and born in blood. And that, my friends, is the entire origin of Darth Vitiate. The thing that I've always loved about Tenebrae is that he seems to have been born already knowing exactly what he wanted. He didn't just want power, he wanted complete ownership. There's this sense about him always, even as a child, that the galaxy already belonged to him, that everyone else just hadn't realized it yet. The image of a 13-year-old boy emperor, quietly wielding a level of ambition and understanding that makes even Marka Ragnos pause, hesitate, and ultimately send him away into exile. That's one of the most hardcore origin stories I've ever heard. Darth Vitiate never fell. He was never corrupted. It's not some great tragedy. It's a straight line. From the moment he was born to the moment he was finally destroyed, his spirit torn apart forever, Tenebrae never wavers. The goal is always the same. The belief is always the same. Everything else to him is a tool, a resource, a plaything to experiment on and discard when it no longer serves him. Even the Force. And that is why, for the entire Old Republic era, Vitiate is not just another Sith Lord. He's the shadow behind all of them, the eternal foil, and one of my favorite Sith in Star Wars history. But now that you have the legend of Tenebrae, a story that I'm sure Vitiate has tried to hide, how do you feel of the legend of the Boy Emperor? If you enjoyed our tale today, then consider liking the video as it helps the channel out exponentially. But as always, dear viewer, may the Force be with you and have an amazing day.